afternoon, and welcome to the Divergent sponsored Women in Tech virtual panel discussion. My name is Emily Carlson, and I am happy to have joining me today an amazing group of women. So thank you so much for joining me today for this discussion. I really appreciate it. And Britt, if we could just move to the next slide. Again, my name's Emily Carlson, and I'm the Vice President of Technology at Divurgent, and I'm really honored to be joined by Gabriella Schuster, Corporate Vice President for One Commercial Partner at Microsoft. Gabriella, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Beth O'Rourke will be joining us very shortly. She'll be joining in the conversation. Super excited to have her join us. Beth is the executive transformation consultant and advisor, former SVP and Chief Information Officer from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Massachusetts. Nora Osmond. Nora, thank you for joining today. Nora serves as the Associate Vice President, IT Service Management at Montefiore in New Jersey, right, Nora?
New York.
New York, sorry.
Close.
And Lisa Cools, welcome, Lisa. So happy to have you joining us. Lisa's the IT Development and Project Manager at Medical Associates and Health Plans. You know, part of what really springboarded kind of my really want to help in this space is really the statistics that are out there right now for women in technology. And Britt, if you can move to the next slide, one thing that really caught me by surprise is just the continued decrease over the past few years of actually women joining the technology field. You know, women joining the tech field, funds being allocated for startup organizations that are being run by women. It really did surprise me at just such the downward trend that we're continuing to see. You know, it just shouldn't be is really what struck me. And, you know, Gabriella, when I saw your recent TEDx talk, you know, that really lit a fire. I think myself, as well as all of the other panelists, were able to watch that. And I loved how you framed it in the Become framework. You know, it really put things into perspective, how we can jump in and really make a difference with just a few steps. And it really resonated with what you had to say. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind kind of springboarding our conversation here with telling us a little bit about that framework and a little bit more about how you came about with that framework.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emily. You know, so like you, I mean, I have been in the tech industry for about 30 years, and I am so disappointed with the fact that we're going backwards, and all of the efforts that we've made aren't really making any difference. We're not making enough progress. We're not bringing enough women into technology. In many cases, I'm still the only woman in the room, and in that, the approach and the treatment, I think, is still not inclusive. And we are not heard. We are not respected and valued for the contributions. I feel like I continually have to reinforce my credibility in the space in order to be heard. And I know I'm not alone. In a lot of the feedback that I've gotten to my TEDx talk, I know that many women feel the same way, that they feel like their voice is not heard and it's not elevated in the conversation. And so what it means is we need more men to step into allyship, to help us be heard, to create the space for us to be included in the dialogue, and to recognize that it does happen, that when we speak up, we are talked over, that men, because it tend to have a much more aggressive approach in meetings, and they don't leave space for people to jump in and to be heard. And what we need to do to create an inclusive environment is to empower everybody to be heard. And so, what we need is more allies, and we need women to be allies with other women. We need them to reinforce each other's voices in the room, to ask each other for their opinions, and to lift up the spirit of all of the women around them. So, we're looking for allyship, we're looking for leadership, and all of that will enable us each to become agents of change. So that's the B. What I'm asking for of everybody is to be an ally, to be a leader, and be an agent of change, or we will never shift this status quo. And that's the beginning of the framework. Then what I wanted to do was give people very actionable steps, because it is clear that while some people do recognize that there is this problem, they don't know what to do about it. And so I thought, if I give them something where it's very easy to remember, become, right? That's all you have to remember. And it comes flowing from that. And then there's 4 easy steps that you can take. And any one of those will make a difference. If you do all 4, it's huge. And I know we're going to spend more time talking about each one of them. It's C is for connection. It's making sure that you actually are creating a network, that you are actively creating access for women, bringing women into your network and connecting them to you and to those in your network. The second one is outreach, and that is about shifting your hiring practices and your supplier selection practices so that you are screening in candidates, not screening them out. And M is for mentorship. Mentorship is critical, and we'll talk about that later. And then empowerment. That is about creating an inclusive environment, lifting everyone up and making sure their voices are heard. So that's what it is. It's about being an ally and a leader, and then connecting, outreaching, mentoring, and empowering.
I love that. That is just amazing. One thing that I walked away from after having heard you speak also is you talked about the invisibility cloak and taking off that invisibility cloak. And that just really resonated with me. And to your point, often being the only female on a call or in the conference room, feeling that empowerment, as we'll talk about later, of taking off that invisibility cloak and knowing how to, really speak up and, be an ally for yourself as well.
Yeah, the irony about the invisibility cloak is that in Harry Potter, it's an empowering thing, right? Being able to put on an invisibility cloak is a magic power. But the reality in my lived experience is that when I am in a meeting or in a dialogue and I don't feel heard, I feel invisible. And when somebody helps me, when they give me the space to be heard, when they repeat what I've said and give me credit for it, then I feel empowered, and I feel like they have lifted off that invisibility cloak, and it is an empowering feeling to be able to take it off.
Yep, absolutely. Nora, Lisa, anything you guys wanted to add into the introduction?
I couldn't agree more. I think Gabriella's spot on, and she had me thinking. I was watching the TEDx talk last night, and I was thinking back in my history, how many times I was always the only woman, and for the longest time it felt like, very lonely place. But how, it happened to me too, that I would start talking and I would see the men look to each other for, the answers or to engage each other, and as if I wasn't saying anything. And it's been a while, that's been happening, but my experience is it's happening less in my circles now, and I'm seeing some men actually become allies and starting to pay it forward and include women, and those who are smart enough are actually engaging in the diversity of thought with different types of leaders and women and ethnicities and thought processes and thought streams. So I think that's really amazing. But yes, I agree. It's happened to all of us, I think, at some point or ongoing for quite some time.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's loneliness about it is that when it happens to you, you start to think it's you.
Yeah.
You don't realize that it's actually systemic. And it's actually the bias that's occurring. And I think that's a level of empowerment we can give each other by supporting each other and realizing we're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree. Lisa?
What really resonated with me was my voice not being heard. And I've been in meetings where, again, I'm the only female and I'll start sharing an idea and a male will talk over me and take my words. Or my favorite is when they repeat the exact same words I said. And then someone takes more account into my idea, and that is, trying to move past that.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, so they coined it, I think they call it mansplaining now.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what that, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for going over that. I think it's just, it's an amazing framework, and being able to break each one of these down into, actionable items is great. The first one, the connecting piece. There are so many great organizations and ways that we can connect with each other as a community, and connect with individuals who help support us. Recently, and just thinking about some of the real organizations that are out there, I've connected with the Women in Cloud community, which I had my first chance to attend that event online, and I thought it was great. Having to pivot again to that more online type of event was unique, and allowed you a lot of, I think, visibility and exposure into being able to reach out and really connect with individuals. So I've really felt that, and then also locally here, being able to connect with other women leaders in my small little community. I live in a very small town between Buffalo and Rochester, New York, and who knew? But there's actually a small women in business forum here, and it's great to even just connect locally with people as well, and be able to get to know other women and allies within our local community. I'm just curious, are there other organizations or ways that you guys can think of that we can further connect out with, not only women, but also men, to help become our allies and to help continue to drive our message? Either locally or corporate?
I'm part of the SIM, Society for Information Management network, and I find that is also a great place for us to connect and hear each other out. And I have seen actually a growing population of women participating in it. So I find that little groups like that and memberships like that are helpful. And I know there are a lot of ideas that everybody else have on how to connect, but so many different ways, and challenging ourselves to get outside of our comfort zone and get to meet new people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think also finding ways to connect with younger generations as well, and being able to connect to help foster relationships, and help to bring individuals into the technology space. I look at some of the activities with STEM and things that my daughter can participate in. I think Girls Who Code is another great example as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are many examples of organizations that do that, build community, and I think that each of us has an opportunity, by participating in those as leaders, to give access to individuals who are in those communities, because very often you get, like, for Girls Who Code, you get a lot of girls who code. Right? Yeah. But what they're looking for is a connection and the access point to someone who's in the business, who can support them, who can become their mentors, who can become their sponsors. And so by joining those groups, you have the opportunity to then increase the connection and increase the network and get them all connected to your connections.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. And Lisa, in thinking about from an outreach perspective, recruiting and hiring practices and really getting engaged with our own leaderships to help drive gender equity, for more women in technology. What have you seen work, or what are conversations that you've had as far as outreach to helping drive, women coming into technology?
One of the things that when I listened to Gabriella's TED Talk that hit me was, don't just hire people you know, because I think that's whenever we have an opening, my male director will say, well, who do you know? And so then the search stops, and maybe there is a much better qualified candidate out there. I also think that in my mind, outreach starts when the females are very young, because we need to encourage them. By the time they get to high school, the pipeline's so leaky for girls to stay in STEM that they're gone. We've lost them by then. So I think, like we mentioned, the Girls That Code. I live in a very small community too, and my public library has a Girls That Code camp, like a second or third Saturday of every month, prior to the pandemic, and trying to encourage those girls to attend that. So when I see the girls at church, I say, are you going to that camp this Saturday, to make sure that they, understand that it's out there and available. My boss's daughter went to a robotics camp, and she was the only girl. And she went to one session and she wanted to leave. And I tried talking to her and encouraging her to continue to go. But, I think a lot of times if they can get one friend to go with them, if they're not the only girl, it makes it so much easier for them. But I do think that we need to reach out to these girls when they're in middle school and to get their interest and explain the roles that are out there for them, and that it's not a male-dominated field anymore, and that there are opportunities. Because I think a lot of them think, well, if I want to do math, the only thing I can do is teach, which isn't true anymore. There's so many opportunities. And I think it's just being involved in the community, talking to the young people, making sure that they understand that there's options and things that they can do, and they're not limited to the traditional type of role.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's a couple different pieces of that, right? One is that, the experience of being the only girl in the room in that very young time actually conditions girls to actually stop pursuing the profession, right? My daughter had that same experience, and she was in a STEM track, and she was the only girl, and she was like, well, I don't want to be with boys all the time, especially in high school, right? I mean, even worse in high school, because already they start the bias comes out around that. So I think that's definitely there, and helping girls understand there are so many roles. It's not linear. What you go to school and study is not exactly the job that you're going to have, and there are so many paths you can take and so many jobs and opportunities available. It's also about, though, making sure within the organizations that are doing the hiring, that are creating supply chain networks, that they are actively working on creating diversity. Because without that, there is a ton of bias in the system where it's not, people go to their networks, they go to the people that they know. That's one. They create job descriptions that actually screen women out because they require 20 or 30 years of experience in something, and women haven't been in the profession that long, right? And so we have to systemically work on each of those things. When you think about the supplier diversity, in the diversity screening process, very often they will screen out organizations that are smaller, organizations that don't have the same level of funding. We know that women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses tend to be smaller and don't have the same level of funding. So by definition, they're screened out. So we have work to do at all levels of changing the system.
I agree. I think when you talk about areas where we could probably target, I think about the Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
These are already organized groups, and they are about empowerment of girls and giving them leadership, training them and giving them leadership coaching. Perhaps targeting them and getting them exposure to what technology looks like and what roles are in technology, and giving them a flavor of what technology can feel like. And it could be creative. It's not just coding. There's so many flavors of technology, but being very mindful of the ways we actually target knowledge and education for girls in their purview, in their way that they're actually organized already. I think that is also another way we can package it.
Yeah. I like that. Awesome. Yeah, and so I think what marries nicely to this is that mentorship factor. So we talk about the outreach, now to become a mentor, either to, the younger generation. You bring up a great point with exposure into the Girl Scout base, and, mentoring and seeing what the possibilities are as far as the STEM space goes. Mentorship can be so impactful, and it's played a large role for me. I was sharing with Nora earlier and thinking about, as I was prepping for this event, I was thinking about the first time I walked into my first consulting assignment, and Cindy was standing in front of the room, and when she spoke, I was like, whoa, I want to be just like that, and then being assigned to her as a mentor, it just brought about so many great opportunities for me to see the different avenues. And I guess, Nora, maybe share some of your experiences about, being a mentor or being mentored yourself and what that meant for your career.
So I have so much to say about mentorship, but fundamentally, I didn't understand what a mentor was initially when I first started my career. And I always associated mentoring with teaching, and that's not exactly right. And recently, I've learned the difference between mentoring and coaching. Big difference, but there's some commonality. My path has been that I was never really assigned formally a mentor, but over time, over my 27, 28 years of experience, I've actually gravitated and selected people to mentor me. And usually they've accepted, not formally, but they found themselves bestowing a lot of great ideas and guidance to me. So I've learned a lot from my mentors. And I think it's really been different types of mentors. So some have been my previous managers and bosses. A lot of times it's been colleagues and peers in different organizations. Other successful women, just like you, I watch somebody talking and I'm like, wow, I want to be like her, and they teach you different things. So it's about taking nuggets from each person and saying, this goes in my portfolio of learning. It's your friends too, it could be your family members, your mother, your sister, your brother, anybody who has something good to bestow upon you, lessons and guidance and wisdom. That's part of mentoring, I think. But there are some organizations that have actually formalized mentorship programs. I happened to work in a company a few years ago where when you joined, they assigned you a mentor.
I love that.
Here's the interesting thing. It was a woman, and I actually never formally met with her because she was always busy. And it kind of, but the intentions were good. But then I joined a women's leadership group, and there was a mentorship committee, and I learned a lot from the women that were actually talking about how to mentor each other. So I think there's so many opportunities across your path to find a mentor or to be mentored by somebody. But what's really amazing is when you go to the other side and you start to draw upon your own experience, when people come to you and they're looking for that kind of mentoring role that you could provide them. And it happens. You don't necessarily look for it, but it does happen. And sometimes you select somebody that you feel needs that guidance, and you make the time for them. And it's phone calls, it's lunches that you didn't really quite plan for. It's, watching them on, some kind of talk that they're doing or some channel that they're on, giving them advice. It comes in so many different shapes. And the one thing I have to say is that, both sides get a lot of it. And even though it's really not a therapy session, I do find it therapeutic. You know, I find that you get a lot of different ways to look at things. Being mentored, you get grounded in reality. You listen to your own fears, and you kind of figure out what's fear and what's reality. And a lot of times they share their journeys, their challenges, their perspective, and they really do provide you with encouragement, and you gain confidence from that. So all of those things are great benefits. And then you find somebody actually being your cheerleader and sharing in your success. So it's just an amazing thing to offer or to be offered.
And I think that the other thing that comes with mentorship is just knowing who to go to when you experience a situation where somebody, you know, where maybe you're not getting the respect that you feel you deserve in a meeting, or how do you handle it if you're being, you know, talked over during a session, or, you know, really serving as that, you know, you have the experience and sharing ways to break down those barriers and help to bridge the gap when it comes to these situations.
Great. And I think it's really interesting when it's, you know, a mentor who's a male,
Yeah.
you know, taking you in and, you know, giving you really hardcore advice and helping you see things a little bit different and empathizing, because that has a different lens. And you tend to weigh that, you know, really, really well, because they come from a different angle. And, you know, I find myself gravitating to that in times when I'm really stuck. Yeah. And I need somebody to help me get unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
Very technical term.
Hey, we all feel stuck. Sometimes it just happens.
Yeah.
Lisa, have you worked with a mentor or have ideas about how to bring in our younger generations and serve as their mentors to help really get them engaged within the technology field?
Mm-hmm. I really liked what Nora said about taking a nugget from different people, because in my experience, I don't know that one mentor is a one size fits all. I think it's more of a variety. So I had a mentor, well, and I still go to her occasionally, but I learned so much from her in the time I spent with her. But she was a very hard and direct person. And so I found myself becoming hard and direct. So then I searched out a mentor that was softer and kinder to get, you know, mannerisms from that and to pick some nuggets up there. So I think it's good to find a mix and to have different people that you can bring together. I had a staff member a few years ago that was perfectly happy just working in our configuration department, configuring our claim system, and she almost had a 2-year degree in programming. And so I talked to her, well, why don't you finish that? Oh, I can't do that. I have family, I have this, I have that. And she only needed 2 classes. So we worked with her to do those classes during the day to get her degree. And then shortly after that, we were able to get a grant that allowed her to finish her 4-year degree while she had 3 little kids at home. And so making those accommodations at work for her to allow her, you know, she did her classes at night, but you know, her and I talk all the time and go back and forth. And I've learned so much from her by how she juggled all that. And she has taken from me, you know, the more business side of things and how to expand. But that's a really good example of someone who was really pretty happy in what they were doing, but just needed that little nudge to move forward.
Yeah.
You mean, you know, most of the time, that's what I find, Lisa, is that, you know, the value of mentorship is something that you might say to somebody in 30 seconds that you didn't think it was that valuable, but to the person you're talking to, it kind of changes the way they're thinking about things entirely, or it gives them the confidence to go pursue something that they weren't going to before. And that's the value of being a mentor, is that all from your perspective, all you're doing is sharing your experience, but the way that resonates with someone else, the empowerment that it gives them, the confidence it may give them, the nuggets that they may pick up on from your experience, whether it's something they'd say, oh gosh, I should never do that, or wow, that's something I want to try, right? Either way, you know, it gives them something, a leg up that they didn't have before. And what I've found is I think that men are much better at networking. They're much better at reaching out and asking for help and getting mentorship than women are. And I think it's really important to take that first step because, you know, similar to what you said, when you ask someone to be your mentor, they will rarely turn you down. And if they don't have time, they will often refer you to someone else. And so, you know, it never hurts to ask.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Gabriella, and I was doing these skip level meetings with staff members, and I always ask them, what's your one wish list item? And I was talking to some of the women, and one woman actually came out and says, I want a mentor. And I almost wanted to hug her, but it was through a team session, so I couldn't do it. I was like, wow, somebody who actually gets the value and the benefit of that. But reflecting back to what you guys are saying, I think there's something else that happens with mentoring. Sometimes we have a blind spot. We cannot see beyond that blind spot, and the mentor can. And they just quickly get you refocused. And sometimes they're telling you what you don't want to hear, but once you hear it, it's hard to go back. And once you're past that blind spot, it's an amazing discovery, and you really can move forward very quickly because you're already dislodging that problem. You know, so it's a big deal.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's played such an important role. And again, I go back to just having someone to bounce ideas off. And I want to, you know, I would love to invite, you know, individuals who are in high school even, you know, to reach out, because I would love to really serve in that role. Just having somebody to say, I'm thinking about going in this direction when I go to college. What do you think? What did you experience when you first started out in technology? Tell me about that. You know, for me, my first experience in technology was sitting at a workbench and assembling PCs. Probably not the most glamorous, but it was a great way to understand what the certain roles are. So I think finding even or starting, you know, internships, starting at that college and high school levels to bring people in, to let them experience and talk with someone who's got that industry level knowledge to say, this is truly something that I feel is a fit, and help to encourage them to continue no matter what the barriers are that they might face. Yeah. Do any of your organizations have internship programs that you help to serve as mentors to those interns?
We have internships, but not where we're mentoring our interns.
Yeah, we do. We have internships, and actually one of the requirements is that the interns get a mentor while they're there, so that they have somebody who can help guide them in better understanding the organization.
Yeah, oh, I love that. That's awesome. Lisa?
Yeah, we do not do internships here.
Yeah, it's great. Just thinking a great way to help, you know, continue the conversations about expanding their technology interests. So, well, great conversation. I mean, obviously, mentorship means a lot to those of us who are on this call, and it's just great to have this conversation with like-minded individuals. Probably the next piece of this is the empowerment piece. You know, feeling empowered. You know, one, it's a great way for us personally to reach our goals, but really for younger women to also feel empowered to, you know, reach out and go beyond what they may feel that they can. I guess, you know, the other thing is I always try to empower my team, you know, step outside, especially those who are new to the technology field or new to the conversations that may come up. So, you know, how do you guys each feel that you empower those who work with you and are empowering the younger generation to really take a chance on technology, you know, and come forward and have these conversations? So just would love your thoughts on the empowerment piece.
to me, empowering somebody is not as daunting as it sounds, right? It seems like a very, big thing that you would have to do. Really, it's very small steps. So to empower somebody, it is about seeing them for who they are, valuing them for who they are, and asking questions, being curious. Oftentimes, the best way you can draw someone out and draw out their ideas, draw out their experience, and even get them to start thinking about themselves and what they have to contribute is to ask questions and get them to start talking and listen and then pull out those things that they're saying. And that is a super empowering thing to do for someone because they feel valued and they feel like they can then come forth authentically with their ideas and take action. And that is what empowerment is all about.
That's great. Nora, any thoughts?
Well, I think empowerment is everything Gabriella said, obviously, and I think it's also giving people space, room to breathe and to come up with ideas without feeling judged, right? It's letting them know that it's okay, I have something called a really good bad idea, It sounds really awesome, but we're probably not going to do it, but feeling empowered to actually come up with and even execute, ones that we're not quite there yet, but hey, let's see where it goes, and giving them room to, to fumble it a little bit. That's empowering. We don't always get it right. I'm sure, well, I know I've made my share of mistakes, but I won't speak for everybody else, but I think none of us are flawless. So when we feel empowered, we have room to figure it out. And it's really, really validating when you have that feeling of support that you can actually go out there and do something. And if it's not exactly right, well, you fix it. Maybe you take it to another level where it does execute really well. But that feeling of confidence that somebody's got your back, that you are empowered to execute and to make mistakes even, that's really a great thing.
Yeah, and I love how you said that someone has your back, right? That's such a great feeling that even if it is the wrong decision or wrong direction, that that support mechanism is in place, and you do not feel like you're, there's a negative connotation with that. So Lisa, what are your thoughts?
I have always told my staff to go with their gut, based on their experience and their knowledge, to make a decision based on all their expertise, and that there's really no decision that they can make that, if it turns out to not be the best decision, that we can't fix. But I'd rather have them make a competent bad decision than a wishy-washy, somewhat okay decision. I'd rather have them be confident in their work and know that I have their back, and that whatever decision they make will go forward with. And like Nora said, giving them that space to feel like they have the ability to do that.
Yeah. So I wonder why it's so hard for us as women in the workplace to often feel as empowered as we should in situations. I know that often it may not feel the same. Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is because we get intimidated, right? Intimidated by being the only woman in the room, intimidating because in the last time we tried, somebody didn't hear us, somebody didn't listen to us, our idea was discounted, somebody else took our idea, right? I mean, it's those things actually chip away at somebody's confidence, and that they make them feel less empowered. And so that's why it's so important to create this inclusive environment and help everybody feel like they are heard and they are valued.
Yeah. And people just soar when they feel valued and empowered. You can see a difference in that. So well, this has been a great conversation. I really do appreciate you guys for joining in. If there's questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A within Teams. I have one last question that I'd love to hear everybody's kind of thoughts on. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self? So if you could go back, what would you say?
I would have told my 20-year-old self to connect earlier. Back then, I wouldn't have been as apt to join into user groups and take a leadership role in those types of things, or to network. I would have more sat back and waited for the information to come to me. I think I would have definitely told myself to connect more and to seek out a mentor much earlier.
Yeah.
I would have told myself 3 things. Look, listen, learn, in that order. And I'll unpack that briefly. So look at the world with curious eyes, and at people that you admire and how they look, how they sound, how they act. Watch. Look at the brand that you want to develop in yourself. The challenges should be seen with a positive lens, and instead of looking at the why question, ask why not. At that comfort that when you're trying new things, see that as normal, and it's okay, and it's part of the journey, and basically get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So that's the look piece. The listen is really to listen to others intently and with an open mind. Not just to listen to answer right away, but to understand before you're understood, and to be empathetic and compassionate towards others, because we're all in it together. I don't think that it should be a win-lose situation. There are a lot of win-wins, but your intuition, your gut is telling you something, so listen to that. It's usually right. And listen to your heart and what it desires, because it's important that you're following your heart and your passion, not just going through routines and the motion. But then the learn is a really big one, and it goes down to that mentorship thing too. I think if you're an active learner and you learn from everyone and everything, and you are patient with others and yourself, you take on new knowledge in different ways, and you're eager to learn from those who are willing to teach you. It's different people, your managers, your leaders, and yes, your mentors. You pick little things from everybody. It's that the nuggets are coming, and you have to accept that, and enough is never going to happen. You keep learning all the time, and that there are strengths in others. When you're building your teams, look at people's strengths. So learn what their strengths are, and the diversity factor. All those things are part of learning. And the last thing I would say is, learn to forgive yourself and others, because if you can't forgive, you can't forget, you can't move on, and people make mistakes. We're messy. So if you're not learning that on a regular basis, you're not going to get it right. So doing what's right and not what's easy all the time is really a big thing. And learning what the difference is a big factor. I know that was kind of long-winded, but I gave this one some thought this morning with my cup of coffee. And I got back to that. I think it was learning back in the 80s. Look, listen, and learn. It was some kind of module or something. I don't know if I'm myself, but
that's great.
I love that, Nora. I love that. I love, I love, like, don't ask why, ask why not. I think that's awesome. When I think back to my 20-year-old self, the things that I would have told myself is, it's okay to be yourself. Back then I would look at people I admired and I try to be like them, or I would listen to my teachers, my parents, my bosses, who would tell me who to be and how to act, and I tried to be that. I think if I went back now and talked to myself, I'd be like, forget all that. Just be yourself, because who you are is good enough. And you will make mistakes, but you will discover who you are faster. You will be better. You will be able to bring the best version of yourself forward if you stop trying to be someone else, and you stop worrying about your image and instead work on your authenticity. It took me a long time in my career to just realize that, wow, I'm way more successful when I'm just myself, when I just speak up and say what's on my mind, as opposed to rethinking and thinking 12 times before I say something. And so the second piece of advice I would give is trust your gut. You're right. Just trust yourself. you know, when you look around, you think you see a bunch of really confident people. You don't. I mean, they may have that confidence, but everybody questions themselves, and it's okay. And it's okay to step out and then to, you know, to step out. Like if you say something and then people tell you you're wrong, okay, you're wrong, but you should say it. You should share your thoughts. You should share your ideas, and really who you are is good enough. And I think that's really what I would have told myself. Because I spent a lot of time in self-doubt and a lot of time trying to be someone that I wasn't.
Yeah, I can relate with with all of that. I think we probably all can. You know, I look back at being 20 and just, you know, wanting to continue to just do everything perfectly. And it's just, if I could step back, I would say you're gonna fumble, you're gonna fall, and when you get back up again, you're gonna be better because of each one of those falls along the way. And it took a long time to get there. You know, I hope to help my daughter now at the age of 15 understand that, so that when she's growing and is evolving as a person, she knows it's going to be okay, that, you know, you're going to do great things, you're going to fumble, but you're going to get back up and you're going to go across the goal line. And I really wish I had that, you know, when I was 20, that self just, you know, ability to understand that. So yeah.
You're absolutely right, Emily. It's absolutely spot on.
Yeah. Well, I just, you know, I really appreciate you guys doing this. Is something that I feel very passionate about. I would love to, you know, be more involved, and I will be more involved, because we now know some easy, you know, not easy, but important steps in helping to make a difference in our younger generation, and getting them involved in driving that equity within our workforce. It's so important. I would like to open up any last minute thoughts from anybody on the panel.
Yeah, I want to just comment on something Gabriella said, and it's that authentic self piece, because I think a lot of the time we spend there worrying about what others think, and if we're good enough, and do we have to pretend to be somebody else to meet a certain litmus test of acceptance. And you know, we waste a lot of energy on that. And that piece, I think, is really important to hone in, is to be comfortable with yourself. And that takes time. I don't think that happens naturally and overnight. Even the younger generation doesn't know how to do it. But I think about a lot of people that talk about, oh, I'm so different when I'm at home. And oh, the version I have at the office is different than who I am at home. Or you see people that act differently at, you know, off campus or off work time than from work. I don't know how to do that. This is the only version you're going to get. I don't polish it up for work. It's not downsized for home. But I think over time, when you're comfortable with yourself, that natural ability to express yourself and to come off in a trusting way, and people can connect with you better, is because you're not pretending, you're not trying to do something that's not natural for you.
Yeah. That's great. And I think it's been harder this year too, you know, we don't have a separation of home and work. You know, we are all we're all at home, and you know, we have to be that same person. There's no energy or time to try to delineate between the two, because we are just we are the same we need to be the same person. There's, you know, we're all home.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I agree.
It happened really quickly too. Lisa, any thoughts?
No, I mean, I agree with everything that Gabriella and Nora said, and I actually took a bunch of notes while everyone was talking today, so I took some things away, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a great you know, a great sentence, because I think as we all can get together as leaders, as female leaders, and continue to drive this conversation, let's keep it going, because the more we talk about it, the more visibility we bring into, you know, the concerns about the downward trends of females joining us in the technology space. And the only way we're going to continue to really, drive a change is to talk about it and to help support where we can.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think, being vocal, being out there, being leaders ourselves, being allies, modeling the behavior that we would love to see others do. It's one of the best things that we can do to drive that leadership and to change the status quo.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Gabriella, Nora, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today. Unfortunately, Kristen at Mount Sinai Health System, they were having some power outages and some issues with just operations today, and I know Beth O'Rourke was having some operations issues as well. So unfortunately, they weren't able to make it. But I appreciate you guys being able to be a part of this. It is, like I said, something that I'm just really want to help expand and change, and just seeing the impacts and what's going on with bringing females into the tech space is just, it's got to change. And I really appreciate you hopping on the panel discussion with me to talk about that. I appreciate Divurgent for sponsoring the event today and letting me continue the conversation. So
hey, Emily, we actually have a question that came in just a little bit ago. No, you're good. I didn't want you to get to the final closing and us not catch it. So I just wanted to bring that up, but I'll read it so the group can kind of respond to it. But the question is, how do you find strength to ask for a new mentor when you've had a mentor that's gone up the chain and doesn't quite have the time to dedicate to that mentorship relationship?
Great question. Gabriella, Nora, Lisa, thoughts?
Well, I think what I would say is the person that has been your mentor, and if they suddenly don't have the time anymore, to say, hey, I have so much enjoyed our time together. I have learned so much from you. Can you recommend someone else for me to take on as my mentor now, that can help me get to the next level, because I think that your existing mentor will be happy to refer you to someone else.
Yeah, and I like the way that's phrased there, finding the strength. I think that goes to the empowerment piece of the conversation. Feel empowered to ask, if the realization that you still want a mentor, and your mentor probably still wants to help, and it's just, it's probably as disappointing to them as it is to you that there might not be enough time for that one-on-one connection anymore. To your point, Gabrielle, just asking, feel empowered to go ask, if there's a recommendation for a new mentor. So I love that.
Yeah, I had to ask for a mentor. I've kind of found these mentors over time, and I find that, it just happens naturally. If you're interested in getting some core advice from individuals, just find the time to be with them, speak with them, ask them. Will make the time for you. And I wouldn't even say, oh, I'm looking to you as my mentor. I just want to pick your brain on something. I'm looking for a different perspective on things. And sometimes the word mentor might be a little intimidating to those who don't have the time. But if they're feeling that they can help in another way, they might be more open to leaving the door open, and they serve in a way as a mentor, not necessarily as a full-time, structured mentorship mentor, but it's still beneficial.
I agree, Nora, 100%. Like, it's oftentimes it's just going up to someone and saying, hey, I saw you do such and such a thing, or I was in this meeting and I saw you do this, or I saw you present this. I would love to learn a little bit more about that. Can I set up a half an hour for us to have a conversation, right? You don't have to say, I want you to be my mentor. I'd love you to mentor me on something. You can just say that and you start a conversation. And then at the end of that, if you want, you can say, hey, would you mind if in a month or in 3 months, we had another conversation? This was super helpful for me. And boom, you started that relationship, but you don't have to formalize it like that.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. And by the way, you as a mentee have something to offer the mentor as well. So I want to impress that the mentor, when they're fully engaged, they really get something out of it as well. and they end up, learning something from you and growing as well as a person. So it's not a one-way street.
Oh, that's great points. That's awesome. Brittany, did I miss anything else?
No, that was the last one.
Well, thank you for bringing that. I apologize for not seeing that in the Q&A. It was a great question. Again, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Lisa, Gabriella, Nora, Brittany. Thank you so much for all of your help with the coordination on this event. It's been truly appreciated. And I really hope to speak with all of you again soon and continue the conversation and continue to be the ally and leaders for helping to drive change. Thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.